Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man who, much like myself, would like to start the argument that Big Papi is better than Bonds. Here is the captain.
Yeah, hide your kids, hide your wives, and hide your husbands, too. It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
This week, we are excited to be featuring Perception is Spoon-Fed by Vitamin C Brewing out of beautiful Plymouth, Massachusetts. Perception is Spoon-Fed is Vitamin C's take on a coconut key lime pie with graham cracker crumbs. ABV 4.7%, garage grade 3.5 bottle caps out of 5. And let's give some thanks and praise to those great listeners that helped us to fill up the old garage fridge for this week's shows. First up, a shout out to Kelsey in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada.
And a big We Like Your Jib goes out to Melody in Riverside, California.
And last but certainly not least, we have a long distance cheers to Ren from Harlestone in sunny England. Everyone we just mentioned, they went to truecrimegarage.com, clicked on the pint glass, and for that, we thank you.
Yeah, yum yum, get you some. BWERUN, Beer Run. Say it with me. Say it loud and proud. If you need more True Crime Garage for your earballs, check us out on Patreon or on Apple subscription. And Colonel, that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody, gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime.
Hundreds of Boston police officers standing in solidarity as they made their way into St. Francis of Assisi Church in Braintree Sunday. All to show their respect for Boston police officer John O'Keefe, who died last week.
It's such a tragedy. What can you do? This is probably one of the worst things I've ever heard happen.
Police say Officer O'Keefe was found dead during the blizzard last weekend in Canton. A few days later, his girlfriend was arrested and charged with manslaughter in connection to his death. Prosecutors believe she hit him with her SUV and drove off, but her attorney says she didn't know she struck him.
It's just like literally the worst situation I could ever think of.
Tiffany Logan went to high school and college with O'Keefe. She was among hundreds who came out for his wake, lining Washington Street for hours.
Salt of the earth. He was the best guy ever. I went to high school, went to Northeastern for criminal justice. He became a cop, I became a lawyer.
Melissa Jones grew up next door to the O'Keefes.
The family has gone through a tremendous loss. He lost his sister, then his brother-in-law, and the kids have been without parents, and then they had Johnny as their guardian, and it's unfortunate. It's sad.
O'Keefe was the guardian for his niece and nephew after his sister died from cancer. Now so many people are showing up to support this family, grieving once again.
He is just literally the nicest guy, and it was a terrible tragedy, and I would love to know exactly what happened that night.
This is a case that has seemingly captivated hundreds of thousands of people, a case that has captured the attention of so many that it's often reported that if the Donald Trump trial was not going on at the same time, that this would be the top news story on every news show, every news website, and newspaper. This is the murder case, the vehicular homicide case regarding the yet-to-be-explained death of John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a 46-year-old man living in Canton, Massachusetts. John was killed in January of 2022. This very much a headline-grabbing story, and for many, many reasons. But I truly believe one of those reasons is because of the victim at the center of this she said, they said confusing story. John was a good man, a police officer, and a man who adopted his niece and nephew after the passing of their parents. John was well liked and a man who should be looked up to, respected, and remembered fondly. Among the many reasons that this case has so many people talking is the person accused of killing John. The accused is his girlfriend, Karen Reed. Karen is a successful woman. She had her own place, but to add some perspective to this relationship of John and Karen, Karen spent most nights at John's house. In fact, it's often reported that she lived there. John was born December 8th, 1975. He grew up in Braintree, Massachusetts. He earned a master's degree in criminal justice from UMass Lowell and lived in Canton since 2014, where he was raising his niece and nephew following his sister and brother-in-law's passing. O'Keefe was a 16-year veteran of the Boston Police Department. Prior to his death, he was recently assigned to the Sex Offender Registry Unit with BPD. Karen A. Reed was in her early 40s at the time of John's death. She was born 1979. She graduated from Bentley University with a Bachelor of Science degree and a Master's of Science in Global Financial Analysis. She had been a financial analyst at Fidelity Investments and was an adjunct professor at Bentley University. The two had been dating since 2020. This incident leading to John's death occurred in 2022. Some reports do say that they had been dating since 2019. And as we said, they were practically living together at the time of John's death at John's house with the two youngsters. For those not following this case, at the time of this recording, there is an ongoing trial, which of course does make our telling of this true crime story difficult. So note that as details and testimony continues at this trial, there could be more information or even better information. But longtime listeners of The Garage know that we are well versed in covering unsolved and yet to be adjudicated cases.
Well, we had no choice in the matter. We had to cover this case. We were receiving dozens of emails every day saying, when are you going to talk about the Karen Reed case?
It was an outcry, a public uproar, as some would say. You demanded it, and so we are delivering it. Karen Reed is accused of running over John O'Keefe, or at the very least hitting him with her car and causing his death. Now, please note that just a minute ago, I said true crime case and true crime story. And yes, there is a trial that is ongoing. In fact, the court will be in session today. But to be perfectly clear, as far as the courts are concerned, not only did a crime take place, but several crimes took place, with the worst of those being a homicide. Because as it stands today, no one is arguing in court that this was any kind of accident. No, the state of Massachusetts has charged Karen Reed with second-degree murder, motor vehicle manslaughter, and leaving the scene of a collision. Karen Reed and her defense team has alleged that she did not hit John O'Keefe with her car and that this was a frame job. She alleges that John O'Keefe attended a party at another police officer's home where John was attacked, beaten, and tossed out in the freezing cold, and that several persons were either involved in causing his death or at the very least were aware of what happened. And now the group has conspired against Karen to cover up what they did. This, again, according to her defense team. To give a little bit of a background here, Captain, I want to read something that is taken from the Boston Globe. This is from February of 2022. So shortly after John's death. And portions of this article read, Karen Reed says her and two girlfriends found Reed's boyfriend, John O'Keefe, dead. He was face up and unconscious, according to the affidavit. Reed lay on top of him in an attempt to warm his body and administered CPR, the affidavit said. John O'Keefe was pronounced dead hours later at Good Samaritan Hospital. John was a police officer with the Boston Police Department. Since it has been alleged that John's girlfriend, Karen Reed, ran over or at least struck John, and she left him to die in the snow. O'Keefe's death was publicly mourned by Police Superintendent Chief Gregory Long. Long is also the department's acting commissioner. And he said, quote, John was a kind person dedicated to his family and will be greatly missed by his coworkers and anyone who had the privilege of meeting him. We are stunned and saddened and offer whatever support we can to John's family. A Boston officer who declined to provide his name in this news report said that O'Keefe and Reed had dated for the past couple of years. The death of O'Keefe and the circumstances of how he died raises more questions than answers, the officer told the Globe. Quote, he was the best person on the planet, he said of O'Keefe. Reed's defense attorney, David Yannetti, said his client was in shock and mourning. Quote, manslaughter is a tremendous reach in this case. I don't see any criminal intent. This was my client's boyfriend, somebody with whom she was in love. I am disappointed in the rush to judgment against my client, Yannetti said. My client has no criminal intent. She loved this man. She is devastated. She is innocent, and that will come out at trial. Okay. And here we are at trial now, Captain.
Well, this case is very complicated because it's not just as simple as did Karen do this or did she not do this? Then you got to throw in, did something happen to him at the party? And then the other aspect of this case is it possible that there was an accident that nobody was involved in? And then on top of that, was there an accident where Karen hit John with the vehicle but didn't know that she did? So there's all these different angles here where normally it's like this person is either innocent or guilty. I think there's a lot of gray areas in this case.
And that's exactly why I wanted to clear that up and point out true crime, right? I know it's in the name, the title of our show, but for the purposes of telling this story, the captain and I did not go into the research of this case, leaving out the possibility that this simply could be a vehicular accident. I think that is still on the table, but I'm pointing out to all of the listeners out there, especially the ones that are not following the day-to-day on this case, that as far as the trial goes, neither side is arguing an accident. The prosecution is saying Karen Reed is responsible for killing John, and Karen Reed and her defense team, they are saying not just that Karen Reed is not responsible, but that the people hosting this party, somebody there is responsible for what happened to John. And I think that a lot of that has to be based off of the number of injuries inflicted on John prior to his passing. And that's going to be just one of several key elements in this case that's going to raise a lot of questions for both arguments, as far as I'm concerned.
And I'll just say up front, I think this investigation was shitty. And it's actually really pathetic because you're investigating the death, possibly the murder of one of your own. And I just think they dropped the ball. You could argue conspiracy, sure, but I think there's no argument that the investigators dropped the ball. And that's very pathetic.
Let me highlight what you just said there, because I agree with a lot of what you said. And look, we're not trying to turn this on the cops right out the gate.
I am.
It's more of what the captain said. If there ever was a time to get it right, it's when you are investigating the death of one of your own, right?
Yeah.
And so we highlight that because of several reasons, but one of them for me, Captain, is that this, I think, even if the investigation was 100% spot on,
Yeah,
it's still a confusing case. And because I think and agree with you that there were some lackluster moments in said investigation, that it has made it far more complicated than it started off to be.
when you're going to charge somebody with murder, that's serious charges. That has serious consequences to somebody. So maybe you should have a serious investigation, and the victim deserves that.
Exactly. And so does the defendant and all of the persons involved here, because while we lost John O'Keefe, and we've already just tip of the iceberg talking about what kind of guy he was, stand-up guy. But on top of that, when we're talking about second-degree murder charges, the defendant could face up to life in prison. So there's a lot at stake here, and it's double sad, right? We lost a really good guy, a good police officer, but then on top of that, to see that the investigation was not up to snuff. Now we'll quit harping on that. Let's get into some of the information. Let's go through the timeline and description of the information that we have. The short description is that on January 29th, 2022, off-duty officer John O'Keefe was found dead outside a home that belonged to a police officer in Canton, Massachusetts. John was dropped off at the home by his girlfriend, Karen Reed, after a night of drinking. This was in the early hours of the morning to join a gathering hosted by fellow police officer Brian Albert. Then, hours later, John's body was discovered in the yard by his girlfriend and two other women. He was transported to a local hospital where cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma and hypothermia. So let's start at the beginning of the evening. We're going to go back to the night of January 28th, 2022. This is a Friday. John O'Keefe and Karen Reed visited two bars in Canton, Massachusetts. These bars/restaurants are C.F. McCarthy's and Waterfall Bar and Grill. We have boyfriend and girlfriend out on a Friday night having drinks, and they are there drinking with friends. There are those who will say that the relationship was quite strained by this time, that the couple, that they were having some kind of trouble.
Right.
And some even saying that John was thinking about ending the relationship or was planning to end the relationship. Now, this is going to be a key item. And it's also, let's keep in mind here, while this is going to go toward motive in the case, or a possible motive, this is also something that I think is left open to interpretation and is wildly speculated about. And I say that not just from the persons like us watching this with the bird's eye view from 1,000 feet away,
right,
but from those who knew the two individuals. So it seems to be, Captain, that they had some trouble, or it's been reported and testified to in court so far that they took a trip to Aruba with a bunch of friends. And this would have been right around New Year's of 2022. John was, according to the testimony that I have heard, and that's where I'm going to kind of lean on a lot of this information, because if you start to research this case, there's a lot of good networks and a lot of people focusing and covering this case.
Yeah.
A lot of it is their thoughts, opinions, and even speculation that they are offering up as well. So when available, I'm going to try to rely on what somebody was willing to testify in court to. What was somebody willing to put their hand on a Bible, stand in front of a judge and a jury and a room full of people and say, this is what I witnessed. Some of the testimony in this regard, Captain, was that John was falsely accused by Karen Reed on that Aruba trip. So they go with a group of people. This was a group trip, a bunch of friends. At least one of the friends testified to that he was falsely accused of kissing another friend that was along on the trip, and that Karen Reed was upset with him, jealous, maybe even telling people that she had feared that John had cheated on her.
Right.
There's been other reports too that the couple, that they were kind of, it was a relationship from both ends, right? Like where you have the moments of where they're lovey-dovey and they look very much in love and very much together. And then there are other people that say, no, they argued and they fought a lot. And we don't mean physical fights. There's nobody saying that, but that's the word that's being tossed about. There's other people that just say, no, it was your standard relationship. Not everybody gets along together all the time. I think that there's a lot of debate here. Again, if you are in the camp or you want to try to drive home the idea that she may be guilty of something, well, with that comes the idea that this relationship might have been ending. Now, there are other people out there that say that if it were ending, their perception was that Karen agreed, that they were not getting along, and that maybe both of them mutually thought the best thing to do would be to part ways.
Well, and we have to bring up the fact that they actually dated years and years before this. And I always tell people, don't do it. Just because it worked, you know how it worked out before. It makes as much sense as taking a shower and putting back on dirty underwear. But the people that think that Karen is innocent will say, well, we have surveillance footage of them at the bar. I've seen that footage. To me, they look lovey-dovey.
Yeah.
But we don't know what took place from the time they left that bar to the time they arrived at the party. We don't know if a fight broke out. We don't know if you want to go to this party, but I don't want to. Hey, make sure you don't kiss anybody because we don't have to deal with that again. We don't know, because we're not privy to that information, what happened between the bar and the party.
That furthers the issue with some of this information. You actually get varying opinions from the persons hanging out with them that night, right? There are people in that group that night that were drinking and hanging out together that say, oh, they were lovey-dovey. They look great together. They were a fantastic couple. And then there's at least one person that says that she had a conversation with Karen Reed, and Karen said something to the effect of, well, here's a lot of problems with this case, Captain, is the subtlety of some of the words and the importance of one word in particular when people were describing these things, right? So one person says that she had a conversation with Karen Reed, and Karen Reed expressed to her that if John and I break up, and let me phrase it two different ways because I've heard it two different ways. The other way is when John and I break up.
Yeah.
The second part of the sentence remains the same in both telling of this story. And the second part is Karen expressing to this person that she hopes the two of us can stay friends. So the person that she's having this conversation with is somebody that she met through John and became friends with. And she's, according to this person, said either if or when we break up, I hope that the two of us can still be friends. So that would be a very different opinion, I believe, from what others saying that, oh, they look to be lovey-dovey. And let me throw this out there. Anybody that's been in long-term relationships or even just multiple short-term relationships, I think would agree with this statement. It's very easy for people that are not getting along to have the appearance of getting along or getting along and having a great time in the moment when there's a good time to be had, right? If you're at a concert, if you're at a party, if you're out drinking with friends, you might look a little more together than you would when no one else is around. And that's what the captain's pointing out. So
absolutely.
Let's continue on here. So John O'Keefe was at C.F. McCarthy's bar in Canton. He's drinking with some friends when Karen Reed joined the group. The couple and the friends then decided to go to another bar. So from my understanding, Captain, McCarthy's bar was the kind of place that maybe they closed down a little earlier than some of the businesses. They're pretty strict on closing time. And it sounds like the group was still wanting to continue hanging out. And my understanding is that this Waterfall bar and grill was just across the street, like within walking distance. So they just kind of make their way over from one bar to the next. And then while they're at the Waterfall, around midnight, and this is from the state police affidavit, they decided that they were going to head to an after party, if you will.
Let's not stop the party. Let's keep going.
At the second bar, the two of them with the other friends. Now we have several acquaintances, including fellow police officer Brian Albert. Shortly after midnight or around midnight, Albert invited a group of people, the whole group, including the couple, Karen Reed and John O'Keefe, back to his home located on Fairview Road in Canton. Karen Reed and John O'Keefe and friends, they're all invited to this after party at 34 Fairview Road. Karen Reed drives John O'Keefe to Fairview Road. Now, there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of talk about how much people were drinking at these two bars. John, from everything I've seen, is reported that he was drinking beer for the majority of the evening.
Yeah.
And that Karen was drinking a clear, some sources will say, straight up say, it's vodka. She was drinking vodka. They're basing this off of camera footage at the two establishments.
Yeah, and I also think the bar tab as well.
The bar tab. But on top of that, I prefer the reporting that says she's seen consuming several clear liquid drinks, right?
Well, and John leaves the bar carrying a cocktail glass, and he's seen on video footage. Look, we're idiots that drink in the garage, but you should not be intoxicated and being on the roadway. And that's not for your safety. It's for the other people's safety. You shouldn't have your bad decision disrupt somebody else's life. And I think it's very irresponsible. And these, again, boys in blue, not giving a shit about the law.
Look, please reach out to us with some sponsorship. Uber, Lyft, that's the way to go, right? Play it safe, keep everybody else safe, keep yourself safe, and don't get in trouble during the evening. Go out and have as much fun as you want and let somebody else do the driving for you.
Here's a story behind the scenes of the shoe industry. The stark contrast between a premium shoemaker and those riding on massive advertising budgets. Enter G-Defy Shoes, a true departure from the ordinary, backed by a groundbreaking clinical study conducted by UCLA. G-Defy stands apart with its patented and meticulously designed sole construction. It isn't just about absorbing shock. It's like your shoes giving you a high five with every step, boosting you forward and adding a pep to your stroll. G-Defy isn't just grabbing any old sole off the shelf. They're on a mission to boost the biometrics of how shoes work and foster a movement that nurtures your body. G-Defy's investment is channeled into the foundational construction of the shoe, a device that alleviates pain and serves as natural footwear to preempt further wear and tear. I absolutely love my G-Defy shoes. I was only getting 3,000, maybe 5,000 steps a day because my feet were always hurting. My shoes were working against me. But with G-Defy shoes, they work for me. Treat your feet. Treat yourself and give your feet a big hug with G-Defy shoes. You're going to absolutely love them. Treat yourself and treat your feet. Visit gdefy.com now because your feet deserve more than just another pair of shoes. And here's a little extra love for True Crime Garage listeners. Use discount code GARAGE for exclusive $30 off orders of $150 or more. Yep, you heard it right. A little gift from G-Defy to your feet. Experience the miracle that is G-Defy, where comfort meets innovation.
The best part of spring cleaning takeaway is the post-clean clarity you get. It's kind of like when you find out that you've been paying a fortune for wireless. When Mint Mobile has phone plans for $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. It's time to switch to Mint Mobile. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's limited time deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. Save a lot of money with Mint Mobile. Get their great mobile wireless service delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. That's premium service at a great price. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/TCG. That's mintmobile.com/TCG. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/TCG. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right. Cheers, mates. Right after I tell everybody don't drink and drive, I'm sending cheers to everybody.
I know. And usually I'll say something like tall cans in the air, but it doesn't seem very appropriate.
I am a hypocrite. I'm an idiot.
Drink more Gatorade. There you go. Make sure you hydrate.
Remember you had the purple
drink.
The purple drink. Purple vodka with vodka
No.
With purple Gatorade.
Yeah, regular vodka with purple Gatorade. That is a party drink of mine, especially when it's hot, late summer, late night summer. That's a good one.
No, and I understand people want to go from a bar back to a house and party. I think there's a way to do it responsibly, and they didn't. And I think this also is why we have conflicting stories. Whether there's a cover up or not, there's conflicting stories because people were intoxicated.
Yeah. Yes, that's going to add to it, and you're going to have a differing of opinion, and the opinions are certainly skewed by the consumption of alcohol. I've heard it reported that Karen Reed consumed 3 likely vodka drinks at the first bar. I've heard it reported that she consumed 9. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't know. I wasn't there that night, but most of the reporting will say that it's believed that she consumed too much to be driving that evening.
Right.
If she's driving and police officer John O'Keefe is not, my assumption would be, and I come from a law enforcement family, my assumption would be that John O'Keefe did not possess the ability to drive safely either, or at least enough that he let Karen drive.
Yeah, or he thought if I get caught, I might lose my job, but that didn't stop him from having a traveler. I mean, he had a cocktail in his hand the whole time that they were driving to this party, but that's neither here nor there.
So he has a cocktail with him. They are driving out to this Fairview Road. I have seen some reporting where it says that it's uncertain if they were invited. Now, maybe that is part of the what could have been an argument, a closed door argument inside that vehicle on the way there. But everybody else is saying, no, they were invited. The couple was invited. They were asked if they want to come. In fact, we gave them directions. A lot of the reporting will say that, again, much debate on this detail here, but saying that Karen Reed decided, I'm just going to drop John off at the party because she was not feeling well or having stomach issues. The debate being that the two were arguing and she decided she didn't want to go anymore and he wanted to go.
Right.
My understanding here, Captain, is John's house from this Fairview Road location would be about 3 miles. So
not that far away.
Yeah, it would be believed that John would have no trouble finding his way home after this gathering at this acquaintance's home. I hesitate to say the word friend.
Yeah, or it's not that far to pick him up in the morning. But either way, he's supposed to go to this party. We have a destination for our victim.
This is where we have the big fork in the road, right? Because if John O'Keefe made it into the house, there's no debate that Karen dropped him off. The debate then becomes, did he make it into the house? Because if he made it into that home, she couldn't have been responsible for his death.
Well, with cell phone technology and with eyewitnesses at the party, they did see Karen there to drop him off. There's debate on whether they saw John O'Keefe, and there's also a lot of debate on if he made it into the house.
Yeah. The ones that say that Karen is not guilty say that John absolutely made it into the house. The persons that say that she is guilty say that John did not.
I do want to point something out, though. What's so fascinating to me, as far as the true crime world spectrum, if you will, think of a case that you first heard DNA, O.J. Simpson trial. At least for me, it was a big deal in that case. And then you look at that Adnan Syed case. What was a big deal in that case? Cell phone ping technology. This case is the case that we're going to hear so much about cell phone data information. I think this is going to change the way a lot of people try to prosecute cases and how they try to defend cases, because based off the data on John O'Keefe's phone, after the time Karen dropped him off, his phone recorded him going up 3 different flights of steps. Karen's data information says that she didn't do that. She drove home, went to sleep. That's what the cell phone data information tells us.
And some have stated that it could be the glitch is not a right word, not the right word, but some are saying that because it's a hilly area, this neighborhood is hilly, that it could have recorded him going up and down steps or a flight of stairs because of the way that the vehicle was traveling on the road to the house.
And also, we don't know how a cell phone is going to react to blunt force trauma and the death of an individual.
And again, what is not in dispute is Karen dropped him off there that night. And like the captain said, there are people that spotted her vehicle there. That was a black Lexus SUV.
Fancy.
So what's not in dispute is that she dropped him off. What is up for debate is, did he make it into the house? Because as I just said, if he did make it into the house, Karen cannot be responsible for what happened to John. Now, a snowstorm hit Canton in the early morning of January 29th, and that's going to be key here too. Karen Reed reported that when she woke up the next day, she discovers John O'Keefe had not returned home. So I have in my notes here, Captain, that around, I don't know why I put around because it's pretty precise, 4:53 a.m., Karen Reed, who spent most nights at John O'Keefe's Canton home, called and texted him. And when he failed to respond, she became worried.
Yeah, she also texted him on the way back, just basically let me know how everything's going. Because he was, in Karen's account, he was waiting at that door for a time period. So she wanted to make sure, did he get into the house? And when she was texting him during that time before she went to sleep, he wasn't responsive. She wakes up, he's not being responsive.
And there's other cell phone information that we can get into as we go, or maybe we'll save space for it, designated spot for it here in the telling of the story. So after John does not respond to calls and text, what we do know happened is Karen Reed contacted someone who's listed as an acquaintance, Jennifer McCabe. And this is interesting to me because one thing we've not seen yet at the trial, Captain, and this very likely will happen. I'm really curious how this is going to play out. But there's 100 witnesses that will be called at some point during this trial. Now, that doesn't mean people that were there that night, people that hung out with them that night. It could be, we're talking about the medical examiner will be called at some point. We'll have experts, paid experts for both sides of the table, and so on. But one of the people that I believe will be called will be the niece, John's niece, because the way that it's reported is that Karen wakes up and she's simply an acquaintance of this Jennifer McCobb. And so she doesn't know how to get a hold of Jennifer. She asks her niece, who knows Jennifer's daughter, if she can get in contact with her mom.
Yeah.
And the way that the story goes, or is being told, is that Karen woke up on the couch at John's house, spoke with John's niece, and then was able to get in contact with Jennifer through John's niece. Jennifer agrees to join Karen with another woman, and this woman's name is Carrie Roberts. The three are going to go out and look for John. So the three women return to Fairview Road in Carrie Roberts' vehicle, where they saw O'Keefe lying unresponsive in the snow. There are, as one would imagine, we got three women in a car together, and the way that it hits my ears, Captain, is it sounds like three different tellings of the same story, right? Like it's three different versions, all kind of slightly different from one another. There are some details that match up, some that do not.
Well, you're seeing a dead guy in the road. What do you expect? You're not going to get great eyewitness testimony here, right? Because this is a tragic event. Whether they knew he was out there or not, this is a tragic event. There's a lot of moving pieces here. Again, I just don't think you're going to get a solid story out of all three of them.
Okay, so let's go through a little bit of this, one piece at a time. Karen Reed exits the vehicle. She, as we already said, she runs over to John, attempts to perform or does perform CPR on him. Jennifer calls 911. This is at approximately 6:04 a.m. And now we have Canton Police, Fire, and EMS responding to the scene. A short time later, O'Keefe was transported to Good Samaritan Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. A medical examiner later reported that O'Keefe had abrasions to his right arm, several lacerations to his face, 2 black eyes, a skull fracture, which would have contributed to brain bleeding. They determined that hypothermia was a contributing factor to O'Keefe's death. I want to say this.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of people reporting on this, and I'm not going to single anybody out because, as said, this is a difficult story.
And sometimes we're stupid too.
But I've seen this reported a whole bunch of different ways, right? Like we went through a fairly descriptive reporting of what the medical examiner said. There's been people that have given a very shortened version of that. There's been some reputable news outlets that report that he died from hypothermia, which
not true.
It looks to me, based off of the more detailed accounts, that hypothermia was a contributing factor to O'Keefe's death.
Everything I've seen from the credible sources have been he died of blunt force trauma. And again, I guess I'm going to be talking shit. Get ready. Put your boots on. Because when an officer is dead because of blunt force trauma outside a police officer's house, you better do a thorough investigation. You better cross your T's and dot your I's.
The prosecution alleged that Karen Reed dropped off John, made a 3-point turn to reverse direction, and in the process rammed into John O'Keefe or ran him over and then drove away. Defense and Karen Reed theorized that John O'Keefe was attacked and beaten inside the home, and his body was then left outside.
Yes.
And he passes away. However, there are 11 witness statements that say John O'Keefe never entered the home. Let's discuss the scene a little bit here. At some point, and I'm choosing to use that phrase, at some point, because there's varying descriptions in telling of when this occurs. But at some point, a broken rear tail light is discovered on Karen Reed's black Lexus SUV.
Right.
In some tellings, she discovered it and points it out to other people, and other tellings, other persons discovered it. And again, the time frame on when this was discovered, we do know that it was broken. What we don't know, what we don't have, I don't have a clear understanding of, because there's been too many different people, too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say, Captain, with an opinion on when this tail light was broken, because the state is going to allege, the prosecution is going to allege that the tail light was broken when she hit John O'Keefe. There are others that will say it was broken at another time, maybe another accident where she bumped a vehicle in John's driveway that had nothing to do with John's passing. And then there's others that say, no, maybe it was broken on purpose by somebody else to make it look like
she hit John. Yeah.
Karen hit John, to be kind of the icing on the cake to seal the deal on that story, on that narrative.
Yeah, just real quick, too many cooks in the kitchen, to me, seems like a good time. I think we should use the phrase too many cowboys on a donkey, or too many fat kids on a tricycle.
One of the persons that we talked about, Karen Roberts, told police, quote, she believed Karen was still intoxicated in the morning. This is when they're out searching for John. And said that Karen Reed had told her, quote, she did not remember last night. So that's going to be a very different version than Karen Reed saying, no, I saw John get out of the car and he walked up toward the house. This person saying Karen expressed to her, I don't remember last night.
Have you ever had a friend that has blackouts? Because I've never experienced one myself, or that I guess I could remember. But I used to have a roommate that would go drinking, and let's say we went to 10 bars. Well, he'd wake up the next day and go, hey, what did we do last night? Well, what point do you stop remembering? Well, I remember we went to this bar. And then you have to tell the guy, we went to 9 bars after that. And the person was walking around having a good time, was very smiley. If there's no way, if you asked me, was he blackout drunk at that point, I would have said, absolutely not. He seemed like he was having a great time. So it is possible that maybe if she had 9 big vodkas, that she doesn't remember everything exactly the way she is remembering it.
That's where I was going to go too. That if she did in fact consume 9 vodka drinks at that first bar, then I would be of the belief that it stands to reason that she may not remember portions of the night.
Yeah.
The other thing too with drinking, there's a lot of complicated things about drinking and managing one's drinking. And I don't want to sound like an alcoholic managing one's drinking, but what I mean by that is,
well, you are what you are.
Look, I go out. I like to go out a lot, and I will tell you, and I know that many people back me up on this. The drinks are the strength of a drink varies depending on where you go. And some places they're a little heavy handed and give you a big pour, and other places they are tight with the purse straps and they want to charge you for an expensive drink, but only put a little alcohol in that drink. So,
but it also depends sometimes on the sex of the client. Oh, a pretty lady comes up and wants a drink. Oh, we'll make it a little more boozy for her.
Well, body type too. It plays a big factor in it. But again,
yeah. And Karen's very small.
From being a former bartender, drinks are poured differently at different establishments. Seasoned veterans of drinking fail to recognize this. The drinks always hit you later, right? You can consume them now. They're going to hit and affect you later.
They'll catch up to you.
She may have felt one way when she left the bar and felt a completely different way at some point during that drive over to the house. Let's go further along on some of Carrie Roberts' statements. So again, from the affidavit, she says that Karen Reed allegedly told her, I wonder if he's dead. It's snowing. He got hit by a plow. Now, mind you, she's saying this is while we were out. We're venturing out to look for him. We've not located him yet. And she's saying that Karen Reed is already talking about John potentially being dead. or what could have happened to him. The three women drove to Fairview Road. This is like whiteout conditions.
Yeah.
This is a powerful snowstorm.
You can tell by the surveillance footage of John O'Keefe leaving the bar. You can't make out what the vehicles are because they're completely covered in snow, and the snow didn't stop once he got to that party.
At some point, the three women spot John O'Keefe in the snow. Now, again, we have Jennifer who will say it's her opinion today that she believes that Karen already knew where they would find John, and that she believes Karen was directing them to John, and that Karen spotted John before the other two women did and jumped out of the vehicle. Again, that's Jennifer's opinion of the story. John has cuts on his face and arms when they find him. He's got blackened eyes. Some reports say the blackened eyes were swollen shut. There's blood-stained snow. A broken cocktail glass was discovered near O'Keefe's body, with some persons alleging that at the scene, Karen Reed said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." All right, this has been a big part of the trial. And to be perfectly clear, from the testimony that has taken place so far, there are persons that say they did not hear her say that. And there are other persons that have varying
accounts,
descriptions of what she said, accounts of what she said. Some saying, "I hit him." Some saying that she repeated it. She was hysterical. We do have some of the first responders saying that she had said some suicidal type statements, made suicidal type statements, that they put her in, I believe it's called a section 12. It varies depending on jurisdiction, but I believe that's what it's called in this location.
But other people said that she wasn't saying, "I hit him, I hit him." She was asking it like a question. Did I hit him? Did I hit him?
And yes, and that's what Karen is saying in her defense. She says that, yes, I said I hit him, but that's the sentence started with a "did I hit him?"
Yeah.
And if you could see my sentence on paper, it would have ended with a question mark. And that would make some sense if she accidentally hit him, or if she has no idea what happened to him. You are there on the scene with first responders who unfortunately have seen things like this before, or are at least expected to get to the bottom of things. And it would not be out of question for someone who does not know what happened to go, "Did I hit him?"
Because if she was sitting there yelling, "I hit him, I hit him," then you lock her up right then and there. And they didn't do that. So I think it's pretty clear that she was saying, or I think it was pretty clear that she's asking the question, "Did I hit him?" Because if she's sitting there screaming, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," why wouldn't they put her in handcuffs right then and there?
And I didn't put this in my notes, what it's believed that she said as far as the suicidal remarks go, but I believe it was something like, she says, "Well, I could just die," or "I should just die," or something of that nature. Now,
That's not suicidal thoughts.
well,
To
I don't know. I don't know that that's what is reported. I'm going off of memory here, but let's point out here, there have been at least 4 first responders that not involved in this situation, right? These are just people that are offering up their opinions, but at least 4 first responders that I have heard, and 2 that I spoke to directly, that said, look, if you find a loved one, if you're showing up at a scene and you find someone that you love and truly care about, and they have died, it's not uncharacteristic of the person that found them to A, be in shock, B, be hysterical, and C, say things that they may or may not mean, that you could lose touch with reality. And all of those first responders have said, and the 2 that I spoke to said the same thing. So I think we got to treat this as gospel here, Captain. When that many people say the same thing, they all said, if she said suicidal remarks or not, that is not an indicator of guilt or an indicator of innocence. in their opinion, that they've lived through experiences like this. And unfortunately, that just kind of comes with the territory.
Absolutely.
What we do know, though, Captain, is Karen Reed was arrested and then released on $50,000 cash bail. The Fairview Avenue is a residential street lined with single-family homes on sizable lots. The avenue is mostly quiet. The home where John was found is a large gray colonial set back from the roadway. And as we have already talked about a little bit, John's death came as Massachusetts was hit with a powerful nor'easter, a storm that dropped a reported 20 inches of snow in Canton and drove temperatures as low as 12 degrees. Police say they found a broken cocktail glass and pieces of a tail light at the scene. A forensic toxicologist estimated that Karen Reed's blood alcohol content, BAC, would have been around 0.13 to 0.29 around 12:45 a.m. So it's believed that if she did strike John with her vehicle, that it happened sometime around 12:45, 12:30, somewhere in that time frame, and that they're basing this off of information that they get on the 29th, right? At a later time. She takes a test, a blood test. Based off of the results of that test later that day, they're saying, okay, well, at the time of when this may have occurred, her blood alcohol level would have been 0.13 to possibly as high as 0.29. So just to give a little bit of cross-reference check here, in Massachusetts, it is illegal to operate a motor vehicle with a blood alcohol content of 0.08 or greater.
So she's wasted.
According to a Google search, which I don't like this because we've already danced on this a lot. Alcohol affects different people differently, and drinks can be prepared differently. But a quick Google search would tell us that Google believes that 4 standard drinks would put you at 0.08. Now, what is not included in that statement would be how quickly one consumed them or how long it took for one to consume them.
Well, like we said, she's a petite female. She isn't that tall and she isn't that big. She's a tiny person. So that could affect her more so than somebody bigger, but I'm a cheap date. Get a couple on me. I'm feeling good.
Well, and we're talking about a night out. This is not a whole day of events, right? This is a night out. Now, on January 31st, an autopsy was completed on John. Prosecutors said that the medical examiner ruled the cause of death was blunt impact injuries to the head and hypothermia being a contributing factor to his death. They say that the medical examiner did not find, quote, any obvious signs of an altercation or a fight. What we really need to hit this home, because this is a case that I've heard so much talk and speculation about this autopsy, yet none of those people have seen the autopsy. It's been sealed. And while some people say that's the state's way of trying to cover this up, or, that just fuels the cover-up talk or the conspiracy talk. But the reason why we have so much information about this autopsy, even though that it's been kept from the public, is it's been openly discussed in newspapers and news outlets. But on top of that, there's been some court hearings since January of 2022 leading up to the trial that we're at today. And there's been the defense team and the prosecution referencing this autopsy frequently at some of those court hearings, also showing pictures of injuries to John. This will lead us to February 2nd, when Reed appears in a district court. This for the first time. She pleads not guilty. The charge in February of 2022 that she was facing, she pled not guilty to manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the leaving the scene of a motor vehicle collision causing a death. So note that when she goes back to court, this will be in June of the same year. We have a Norfolk County grand jury that indicts Karen Reed on charges of second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating under the influence of alcohol, and leaving the scene of a personal injury and death. So those charges are upped, right? From her pleading not guilty to manslaughter to now she's facing charges of second-degree murder. And it sounds to me this case was made in front of the grand jury, who then agreed that that was the more appropriate charge, was second-degree murder.
Question for you. Do you find that strange? Because to me, it seems like they were going to give her, look, slap on the wrist, right? She's going to do a little bit of time. She'll be on probation, plead guilty. But once she says, well, I'm not going to plead guilty, then it's almost like they upped the charges to make it more severe to try to get her to plead guilty. And then I think that goes to people that argue that there's some kind of conspiracy here, because it seemed like they just wanted this case to go away. And when she wasn't going to cooperate with law enforcement and the prosecution, that they try to make it go away by taking the charges and upping the charges.
Yeah. So that, again, that's the problem with the telling of this story. We do not know, obviously, exactly what has happened, especially behind closed doors. And so this case is fueled by what persons believe as a collective. So you have persons out there that believe that she's innocent and this is a conspiracy and some kind of cover up, a frame job.
Yeah.
And those persons, that camp would tell you, well, this is more proof, right? Everything's more proof that it's a conspiracy or a cover up, for those that share that opinion. And they're stating here, look, manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter, as I understand it. I don't live in Massachusetts. I've been there several times. I would love to go back, but I've never lived there. As I understand it, Captain, carries a mandatory sentence of 5 years in prison. So at the least, she's going to get 5 years in prison for a manslaughter charge. Plus, you're going to get probation and probably lose your license for a very long time. Second-degree murder carries a potential life sentence. I don't think it's mandatory. Potential life sentence. And we do know that I believe you can get probation or paroled after 15 years, 5 years. So you're right. That's a big jump between the two charges. Now, the people that say that this is a frame job will say, look, what they were hoping is you charge her with something like manslaughter, mandatory 5 years. If she pleads guilty, maybe she works a deal and gets 2 or 3 years, and she takes the fall and this all goes away. And it's John was killed. We cover it up. And then this poor woman, her life is turned upside down, but she's not locked away and throw away the key situation. They'll say they upped the charges because she didn't play along. She pled not guilty. She was going to put up a fight and say, no, I didn't do this. The other thing here too, it's really tough to dissect what happens at a grand jury hearing because they're very secretive. They're not allowed to discuss a lot of the details. A lot of times we're not even allowed to know who testified, who was involved in giving statements to the grand jury. So my question to a legal expert from the great state of Massachusetts would be, how does it work there? Is this a recommendation by the prosecution to the grand jury, or can the grand jury say, oh, based off what we heard, we think you should up the charges? Because one part in this is that in the state of Massachusetts, second-degree murder, as far as the definition goes, includes the statement gross negligence or gross recklessness. And don't quote me on that. It's one of the two. I don't have the information right in front of me. But what that means in its simplest form is to arrive at the idea of second-degree murder may not mean that she intended to run him over and kill him. It may simply mean that she was behaving so dangerously, so recklessly for such a long period of time that she was conducting gross recklessness, that it was dangerous for her to drive. It was dangerous to everybody else that she was driving. And not only did she do this, but she did it over a period of time, and it was excessive. So you can look into this any way that you want, right? It could be suggestive that she was aware that she ran him over and chose to leave. It could also mean that she decided to run him over and then left, but it also could mean that this is an exaggerated, excessive recklessness that she was committing, and it resulted in the death of somebody else. To the new charges, Captain, what we do know is she did plead not guilty as well. This is in a Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham, and she was held on $100,000 bail. She made bail. She was released and been out since. That was in June of 2022. Karen Reed's defense claims that she was framed. This is from May 3rd of 2023. Defense attorneys Alan Jackson and David Yeti alleged that John O'Keefe was involved in a fight inside of Brian Albert's home. They claim John O'Keefe was beaten and his body was later dumped outside. Jackson and Yannetti focused on wounds to O'Keefe's arms, which they said showed he was attacked by Albert's dog during the fight. Then on May 24th, 2023, during a pre-trial hearing, Karen Reed's attorneys laid out what they alleged to be a cover-up by law enforcement, saying, quote, certainly the Massachusetts State Police is involved. There are people that were in that house that are involved. This is coming from attorney Alan Jackson. Quote, Brian Albert is involved. Jennifer McCabe is involved. The rest of the folks that were in that house, there is some level of involvement by every one of them, every single one of them. We're not going to rest until we get to the bottom of exactly who's behind this cover-up. Not only Karen Reed deserves this, John O'Keefe deserves this and has deserved this from moment one, and that's why they're not going to rest. The attorney Alan Jackson goes on to say, I don't think I've ever seen sort of a more obvious and more troubling set of circumstances that suggest a conflict of interest or a series of conflicts of interest. Alan Jackson is a high-profile attorney from California. He became famous or well-known because he represented Kevin Spacey. At that trial, Kevin Spacey was found not guilty. What he is alleging here in that statement that I just read is that the lead state police investigator on the O'Keefe case has close personal ties to a number of the people that were at that party where the fatal incident happened. Following a dramatic court hearing, Karen Reed spoke to reporters for the first time. Again, this is in 2023, where she says, quote, we know who did it. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know. She's standing on the courthouse steps and saying, quote, I tried to save his life. I tried to save his life at 6 a.m. I was covered in his blood. I was the only one trying to save his life, end quote.
I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the garage. Polarizing case. So much more to get to. Stick around till part 2. Until then,
be good, be kind, and don't litter.